I care so deeply about what's going on on the planet and loss of species. And I think people might sort of think their tiny growing space or their garden or their allotment just doesn't count in that big picture, but it absolutely counts. I'm always thinking about, yes, this is something great that I can eat, but it's also how can this like help the whole situation, and that actually makes you feel better because it feels like you're being proactive to tip the balance in the right direction. I'm Mandy Barber, and we're here at the beautiful Badderford Farm, and I'm the owner and manager of Incredible Vegetables, which is a perennial vegetable growing project, plant nursery, seed saving, research, all of those things. Well, my story started off with actually a perennial 9-star broccoli, which was the first perennial vegetable I ever grew. So probably 15 to 20 years ago, you could still quite easily get perennial 9-star broccoli seed. It's much more scarce now. But I thought, wow, isn't it fantastic that you can grow this broccoli-like plant? And I managed to grow them for 5 years at a time. So you harvest every spring, and then the rest is history. So one thing led to another. So, I mean, everyone sort of knows about all the usual perennial vegetables, but there's so many more, hundreds and thousands of perennial edible plants and edible ornamentals. So starting off with the perennial broccoli, then I found out all these other perennial brassicas and then other perennial leafy greens, and that led on to other research. And what you thought was going to be a small collection of plants ended up being vast. And then anyone who's passionate about anything, of course, you want to collect the next thing and learn about the next thing. So it all snowballed from there, and also generated a lot of interest from people. So they were really interested in what I was growing, wanting the plants, for their own gardens. So that's how Incredible Vegetables was started, really. Like people being so interested, and they go, Mandy, have you got some of those plants? You can send me. So it sort of blossomed from there, really. A couple of decades ago, I was an artist then and a photographer, and I hadn't really touched, apart from growing a few of my own things at home. I'd never foresee what I'm doing now. So it's been a massive learning curve, and it's very exciting because I love the plants and I love learning about them. But I hadn't imagined that it would be a business, and that it would fulfill such a niche, for people. So I hadn't imagined this sort of 20 years ago. But I think so many things. I think along with other growers, seeing seeds that you've saved germinate successfully, like taking on that next generation, and that you've sourced the rare plants, you've grown them on, you've produced seeds, and then you're testing the seeds, and then you have a flourish of a next generation of those plants. But also trying to do impossible things, like growing tropical legumes, and like in Devon, which has a mild climate, but still not possible. But you go, yeah, I'm going to get those pigeon peas to grow in Devon, and sometimes you have successes, and sometimes you have failures. But it's that drive to sort of really drive on the research and go, wow, we could have this as a crop for the future. The same with the groundnuts, like such an important crop, and being excited about maybe this could be a thing that could change or revolutionize how we grow vegetable protein in the future. So that really lights me up with enthusiasm, that kind of side of it. But also just being amongst the plants, just the healing and the benefits, and as well as being able to harvest from them. It's like creating a whole system that just it just gives you like a feeling of well-being as well. So perennials play a really important part. I think it's it ticks so many boxes. It's partly to do with resilience, having some long-lived staples in your garden. So most dinners start with onions, so like perennial onions. Like I sort of feel like if you've got some perennial leafy greens, some perennial onions, some herbs and things, you've got the basis for so many meals. And these were things that quite happily sit in your garden without too much work, or like a bed of perennial leeks or something that will feed you year after year after year. So there's a kind of that's pride that comes with like being able to feed your family and be self-sufficient in very low maintenance perennials. But also, so many of them have benefits, not just to feed you and your family, but also create habitat, create food for insects, are beautiful in their own right. And also you're not having to water, you're not turning over the soil, so you're creating a much healthier, ecosystem in whatever growing space you've got. So the benefits are just vast by introducing them. So this is saltbush, which absolutely loves it in here. It's got perfect conditions in here. A plant that can be used to restore soils, like in soils that have been eroded or sort of sandy soils. It can like help keep soils together. It can also be used as a windbreak. But in terms of nutrition, it's right up there with like its nutritional profile is just incredible. So it's like really nutrient dense, and it's actually even not grown in salty soils. It's still got like a hint of salt in its flavour. A resilient garden has to be diverse, and also plants. The perennials I work with, a lot of them are really deep rooted. So compared to growing an annual, which you most likely start from seed, and it has a very, very delicate transition into maturity and a relatively short time in the ground. But like a kind of climate resilient garden, you've got lots of really, really deep rooted plants. So they're always starting from that really advantageous position. They're up and away, and that kind of gives them that built-in resilience. But you're also talking about low maintenance and much lower inputs as well. So that's also part of it, that plants can really look after themselves, and you don't have to see them through that delicate stage every year like you would with annuals. It can be touch and go quite a lot of the time. So it's like things you don't have to water, things that have really extensive root systems, things that will come up early in the year, but also will give you a diversity of kind of tastes, flavours, appearance, and will bring wildlife into your garden as well. All the insects that arrive with the flowering perennials is also incredibly important thing to do. I think the biggest thing for me is learning to leave things alone and like allowing some disorder and allowing nature to share the space so that you can have a harvest, but just let go a little bit. I found the more I've let go of my growing spaces, I think you can do this more with perennials, because they can push through anything. They don't need like this kind of tidy sort of manicured space. They're beasts, a lot of them. So they'll once they've established, they'll grow through. I've found that letting go creates diversity and beauty. So just allow your space to evolve in a more gentle and natural way, I think.